Welcome to our fourth lesson in our class on reading and writing engineering research articles. In this class, we'll be looking at the introduction, and in the first half, we'll be looking particularly at the research goal. At this point, we're in the second part of the course. In the first part, we looked at the overall structure of research articles and the idea of argument structure, and particularly how we are going to use component claims, which we'll call components for short, to recognize different parts of a research article. So in the second part, we'll be looking at those component claims in each of the three main divisions, beginning with the importance and need, which we're going to find in the introduction division. So this again is based on the textbook, chapter 4, where we're looking at the overall structure of the introduction division. So just to remind you, each of the main divisions in an engineering article, a research article, contains three implicit questions, three implicit claims that are related to each of those three divisions. In engineering, they relate to the problem, the solution to the problem, and comparison of that with existing solutions. Whereas in science, we're looking at questions. These claims are not stated directly in the article, but are underlying the structure of the whole article. So again, for a reminder, the three main claims that we'll be looking at here are importance, need, and research goal. And these relate to the underlying claims of this division. In science, you may also find framework and occasionally a little bit in engineering papers as well, but we'll leave that until the next lesson because that's a little more complicated topic. So if you want to join a discussion, any kind of discussion, you need to know something about the topic. For instance, if you want to talk about music, there's a totally different vocabulary for rock music versus classical music. Different artists, different composers, different instruments, everything. If you want to talk about entertainment, there are different actors, different films in Hollywood and Bollywood. In sports, every sport has its own lingo for different leagues, for different players, different types of plays. Same is true for politics, religion, anything. If you want to join a discussion about any of those, you need to know the vocabulary. And the same is true for an academic community. If you want to join any community, you need to know the vocabulary, the people, the main people involved, and a little bit about the history. So for an academic community, you need to use the right vocabulary, the right way, referring to the important researchers in the field, citing the important papers. This is what you do in the introduction of a research article. So remember when you're looking at an article that the introduction is based on an implicit claim. In science, it's that you have an important unanswered question, or in engineering, that you have an important unresolved problem. Again, these are implicit. They're not stated directly in the article, but they form the structure. They guide the structure of the article. And that's because there are two parts of this claim. The first is importance. The second is that there's a need, that this question has not been answered or the need has not been resolved. And then this leads to the research goal, how the researchers feel that they have met that need. This then becomes the main claim of the article, how this article contributes to the community. So this main claim involves these three basic components: importance, need for the work, and the research goal, in science or engineering. But it's a little bit different because in science, there's a huge research area available. And so you have to prove that the work is important, that people should pay attention to it. On the other hand, in engineering, the research area is much smaller. And so you have to prove that the work has not been done. As a result, the importance component is more important in science, whereas the need component is more important in engineering. And therefore, there's more past research cited in connection with that component. So this main claim is actually repeated several times. The first time it's found in the article itself is usually in the introduction, because the abstract is not considered part of the actual article. But it should be in the abstract as well. And also then in the conclusion where you say, we have answered this question, we have solved this problem. And so if you have trouble finding it in the introduction, you can look in the abstract or conclusion for similar wording and try to find it that way. There may also be other places throughout the article. For instance, at the beginning of a section, it may remind readers of what the research goal is as a way of setting the tone for that section. So again, for the research goal, the first statement of this officially is in the introduction. And therefore, it's important for understanding the whole article. So it's important to find it. And you may wonder, well, how can I find it? In order to do that, we're going to use component markers. Component markers are common vocabulary found in many different articles, and you can reuse them in your own article. But then it's the specifics around that make your paper unique. For instance, if we were talking about beef noodles, which are common in Taiwan, there are many different kinds of beef noodles. All, of course, have beef and noodles. But at the same time, some have meatballs or eggs or vegetables, or they have different spices. Those are the things that make it unique. And those are the same as the details around the component markers that make each individual article unique. So we're going to be looking at two ideas in this particular unit. We'll be looking at paragraphs and topic sentences. In English, every single paragraph should have a single topic, a main point, a main idea. Now, paragraphs in English are usually shorter than in most Asian languages. Asian languages frequently will have several main ideas in one paragraph. And so, particularly with Asian writers, you may find more than one main idea in a paragraph if they've carried over from their language. We're also going to look at the idea of topic sentences. Again, good writing in English is based on the idea that there's a topic sentence in every paragraph that summarizes the main topic of that paragraph. And it's often the first, sometimes the second sentence of the paragraph. So we're going to be looking for the research goal. And the research goal is usually identified by short groups of words, which we'll call component markers, such as we do something, we propose, we describe, we define, or in this article we, or this article. So it's something about either we do it or this article does. And it's usually found near the end of the introduction, sometimes restated in the second section, but usually near the end of the introduction section. Now, there are many more examples in the textbook of component markers, so make sure you take a look at that. Okay, now the graduate students that are helping in this course are going to show you how to find the research goal in their particular articles, so that you can do the same with your exemplar. Okay, so now Wendy's going to show us how to find the research goal in her article.
Okay, so this is my example article, and this is a title. So when I first wanted to find my research goal, and I will look the end of the introduction division, and we can find it here.
Okay, now that's in the middle of a paragraph, so it makes it a little bit harder to find. So how did you know that that's the research goal?
I will look at the words that the author used, because in other part of the paragraph, there won't be that the propose or the address words. Yeah.
Okay, so before that, it's mostly talked about other research, and then all of a sudden at this point it talks, here we propose. And so that's your marker that says now we're talking about the research goal. Okay, now Bong is going to show us how to find the research goal in his mechanical engineering article.
Sure. To find a research goal, I recommend you to find the organization's component first because it will lead you to find the research goal at last. So
Okay, now Wendy's paper didn't have organization, but you have the last paragraph there is about the organization of the paper.
yes, right. And then the paragraph before the organization paragraph, they will talk about the research goal mostly. And then for these highlights, there is a component marker for the research goal. As you see, we further propose a combination of an integral sliding mode and some things. Yeah, this one is point out that this marker is research goal. Yeah.
Okay. It says we further propose, so that implies there's an earlier goal as well.
At this one.
Okay, so first it says here that in this paper, the controller is adopted. So again, just as we found with Wendy's paper, this is in the middle of a paragraph. It's been talking about need, which we'll talk about later, and then it switches to the research goal. Maybe it would have been easier for readers if they had broken the paragraph there and a whole paragraph, but
it is style of the writer.
That's the way it is. But again, in mechanical engineering and often electrical, it will be just before this paragraph on organization. Okay, now we're going to look at our slightly unusual electrical engineering article and try to find the research goal there.
First we will look at the research goal first. So in this article, they will have the components marked as we focus on clock rating or we add them.
Okay, so in both of these cases, again, previous to that, it had talked about other people and their research, and then in these two paragraphs, it switches to we, and that's how we know that this is the research goal. Okay, now before you go on to the second part of this lesson, I want you to try to find the research goal in your own article. Remember, there are several possible locations. Usually it's either the last paragraph of the introduction division, or if there's an organization paragraph, it may be the paragraph just before that. That's the most common. But you may also find it earlier in the introduction division, or perhaps at the end of the introduction division, if there's a second section. And even if there's a first section, which is introduction, and a second section, it may be stated at the end of both of those sections. It may also be hiding in the middle of a paragraph. It's easier to find if it's the beginning, but many writers will put it in the middle of a paragraph. And it's also restated in the abstract and conclusion. So if you're having difficulty finding the goal in the introduction, look first at the abstract and conclusion, find it there, and then go back to the introduction to look for it.